All right, so very good morning to everybody. This is our Friday morning webinar, and we talk a little bit about during this webinar um, what we did this week, how we did it, what we could have done better, what we did well, etc., etc. Now, I want to talk a little bit this morning about as well, and I kind of mentioned this in the I think I sent out a message or maybe an email or something, I don't know, to all of you good members, and said I wanted to talk a little bit about what some of the most successful people in the group are doing and some of the dynamic that we need to keep in mind and implement as best we can to have the most success in trading. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I think that would be good and super important. And then, of course, we'll talk about any questions you guys have, any comments, anything. But I do want to hear back from you guys, and I want to hear about what's going on. Okay, so let's talk about all of that. First off, let's spend a moment here. Yeah, I think it will be, Dwayne. I think it will be. I want to make sure that everyone kind of just has all the information possible. It's funny. I talk with traders all day long, and I just assume everybody knows everything, and, and then I realize I got to communicate some of this stuff a little bit better. So I think it'll be a good topic to cover. Let's talk for just a couple of moments, real quick here. And we're going to kind of come back to all of this as well as, excuse me, as well as just kind of review a few things. So first of all, we've got some trades running. So everybody knows about our trades. We've got in the works active posiciones. Aussie dollar is running, CAD yen running. And both these trades are kind of just cruising along. So we'll spend just a moment reviewing just the absolute basics of these trades. Then I'm going to come back and talk about them in more detail as far as it pertains to the topic that I want to cover today. Okay, so really quick, we've got our Aussie dollar. We haven't added a new position to this. I've been sending out a couple of updates. I know, we've got a lot of new members in the group and so on. I want to make sure that, excuse me, that everybody knows that, even if you got in after we started kind of our first position, I think most people are in after, by the time we've scaled in our second position, you can participate in the trade, right? And that always is the case. Whenever we put a trade on, if you look at it, it's an open trade, and you see that you can get in at a better price than we got in, take it. Take it. And right now, the Aussie dollar is sitting between our two entries. So that's great. That's totally fine. It's sitting right between our two entries. We've got a little bit of profit on this one. We've got a little bit of drawdown on this one. We're just kind of right in the middle of those two entries. So one thing that I mentioned in the text that I sent out to the group, the alert, the update, and so on, it is we're in at 70.10 and 68.90. So what you can do is, if you're just joining us, you're saying, "Damn, darn it, I wanted to get into that Aussie dollar, but I didn't." Jump in right here. It's 69.18. Make that your first entry instead of this. That's a pretty good benefit. So you get in right there, and then if this thing runs down, what we're going to do is, just watch this carefully, and we'll lock in a little bit of profit. People have asked me about that. Why are we doing that? Why are we locking in some profit and so on? Because what I want to do is, if this Aussie dollar dips down, I wouldn't mind to just have that 68.90 taken out, because if it dips down, we're probably running into 68.25, 35, 50-ish area. So if this dips down like that, I want this to be taken out with maybe 5 or so pips profit. And then we'll just add our second position. We'll obviously close this one in profit, and we'll add that second position down there closer to that 68, 50-ish area. If we can get it in we can get that second position lower by 40-ish pips. That'd be awesome. So for you that may not be in this one yet, jump in now and and wait for that 68 50-ish area if it happens. If it doesn't, we'll talk about where we can add in some profit as opposed to add in drawdown. So that's what we'll be looking at. But yeah, once again, if you're not in this thing, jump in it. Jump in it. I really like the Aussie dollar, and I think it's going to just continue to give us slow, steady movements. And we want it to move a little bit quicker, but there's a lot of things that I want that I don't get. So, we'll just sit in this and let it play out until it gives us the profit we want and until it hits the targets we want. So everyone clear on that? Just a real basic thing. And I have a lot of things to say about this trade and other trades in particular, but everyone good on that? You guys all good? Good. Okay, so good. Okay, and Jim, let's see. Aussie CAD close. Okay, Aussie dollar, CAD yen. Good. Nice work, Jim. Way to do it. Good. Okay. Hey, Dorothy, good to see you. Glad to have you with us this morning. So, all right. So that is and good morning, Jack. Good to see you, my friend. Happy to see you with us. And Mark Mustra, glad you made it in. Roy, good to see you. Hello, guys. What we want to talk about a little bit here. Hey, Frank, good to see you, man. We want to discuss how we can, maximize on this kind of stuff. And this is going to be really, really good. But before we get there, let's talk about this little son of a gun right here. Who got into the CAD yen? And by the way, there's no judgment here. There's no judgment. People were asking me, they were saying, you sound like you're not super convinced on the CAD yen. I was not. We have the CAD yen at 80.80, and this trade was, I will just straight up admit, this trade obviously has worked out. It's obviously in profit. We're up 45 pips or whatever. Or more. Good, James. Good. In at 81.10. Good. Excellent. I took a little bit of a different approach on this CAD yen, and it wasn't because I was experimenting or anything. We had CAD weakness and we had yen strength, and we were breaking a low, and I thought, let's go for it. These are not the typical kinds of trades that I like to take. I like to take trades where we're getting in at major levels and there's big profit potential. But we just basically had a nice little, we had a nice bit of yen strength. The yen is a real good one right now because everybody is in a global frenzy / panic, and the yen always benefits from that. So I thought, all right, let's take the CAD yen. And we had just had Canadian interest rate news. They left rates unchanged. Everyone was like, how's this going to turn out? Not that there was an expectation of rates getting raised or changed or anything like that. But with that being the case, there was some CAD weakness and yen strength, and I thought, let's go for this thing. I was pretty uncomfortable, I will say, about this trade because it isn't my typical kind of setup. That's all right, James. Closed out with 38 pips. Nothing wrong with that. So the CAD yen is kind of just moving along. I want to see this thing get down into this weekly pivot. And I think we're probably going to see that happen pretty easily. That's just basically another 40 pips, about another 40 pips. I think we can get there pretty easily. So weekly pivot on this CAD yen looks like a pretty easy target. It'll probably head further. It'll probably head a bit further, but I think that level is a good little point to just say, all right, well, we'll take 100 pips and kind of call it good. So if you want to put a profit target on there, go ahead right there. We could see this thing head even lower, but 100 pips is a pretty good spot at that weekly pivot to kind of leave it at that. So we'll see how it goes. If you want to ride the trade longer, go ahead. Just protect some profit. If you want to get out at that area, that's good too. I'll of course alert when I specifically close the trade. Just kind of throwing some ideas out here of where I think it will be a good spot to take some profit. So CAD yen was an interesting one because I didn't like this stuff that was happening here. We had some missed pivots up here. I thought, man, if this thing breaks and starts running towards those pivots, I just don't want to sit in it. Now, I said right here that we would kind of keep a little bit of a tighter leash on here and not let it go against us more than about 100 pips, right? Our rule of thumb is kind of always let trades get into a trade with an anticipation of scaling in over an area of up to 200 pips, right? And that's about as far as I like to let it go. And this one I said, I'm going to kind of cut that in half because I just don't know. Yen pairs can be so tricky and they can drag on so much sometimes. And so this one only went against us. We got in down here as we were kind of breaking that low, and we got it up here about 70 pips, I think, 60 pips against us, maybe somewhere in there. About 60 pips against us. Missed that weekly pivot, and then it just started kind of cratering and making a move down and so on. So that's great. It's working out nice. It didn't get to a point where I wanted to add to it, and I know some people got in. James was just saying here he got in at 81.10, which is awesome. So got in at a little bit of a higher price, which is really, really good. So that's all great, and that's a little bit of what I want to talk about this morning. So James, I'm glad you brought that up. But anyway, we didn't get a chance to add to it. It didn't kind of go to the area that I wanted it to go to for adding a second position, and I was just honestly a bit uncomfortable with it. I thought, I just don't want to add to this thing because, yen pairs are being so squirrely right now. Let's just keep kind of a lower risk trade going, smaller than normal position. This is kind of the stuff we talk about, right? If we don't get a chance to add to a trade, it is a little bit of a bummer because our first positions, and this is very important, our first positions should always be the smaller positions, right? The second position that we add to a trade, which we're pretty much always going to add a second position to a trade, our second position should be a larger size. So first is smaller, second's bigger, and so on this one right here, we're up a decent amount of pips, but it is at a smaller position size because we have not yet added to our second position. So that's a little bit about that. Okay. So that is CAD yen. It's playing out. We've got some profit targets. We're going to let this thing kind of run and rock and roll. Okay. What I want to do is use the opportunity to tie all of this in. I want to use the dollar Mexican peso as an opportunity for a little bit of discussion here. Did anybody trade this dollar peso up? Anybody trade this thing? Was anybody just by any chance in this trade? Norbert, good, man. Oh, look at you, Jim. You were in the dollar peso as well? Good. Okay, excellent, guys. I love it. Okay, so the dollar peso, for those that are new in the group, came after we kind of spent a lot of time and took a lot of trades on dollar peso. This is just basically a reminder of the methodology, but it's a reminder of why we do the trades the way that we do them, right? So for those that forgot or that are new in the group and so on, we talked about this dollar peso a ton, right? We took at least a couple of trades on this thing over the last few months, and we were looking for the dollar peso to run into these targets here, right? I drew this right here 2 months ago, 3 months ago, right? Whatever it was. These were the areas that we were looking to trade the dollar peso to. And, we kind of got bored with the trade, really, and just said, all right, we made profit a couple of times on it, but it just seemed to fail to get up there. But trading at a nice little support level right here, right? And we had our profit targets set, our targets that attract the market set up here. And then here goes the dollar peso, a few months later, finally makes this big move right here. And we get that big push into some of these upper targets, right? So number one, that just kind of reinforces why we take the kinds of trades that we do. That's exactly what the Australian dollar, US dollar trade is, right? Every trade has the potential of kind of breaking through levels, but we've got this Aussie dollar trade that's kind of in a similar position where we've got all these important targets up above, and we're just kind of sitting here. We're trading this around major support. We're sitting here waiting for this thing to get to those profit targets. Now, we can't really time the market perfectly, right? Sometimes, just like this dollar peso, sometimes things will sit for months. And, it's not, we don't usually sit in a trade for months, but sometimes it takes months for these big runs and these big positions to play out, right? If dollar peso has done nothing, you would have been eaten up and swapped quite a bit, which is why we kind of abandoned the trade to some degree. So that we didn't have to sit in it and kind of, pay endless amounts of carrying costs for it. But it made the run, and that's all that the Forex market does, right? It hits levels, it runs to targets. That's it. That's it. So our whole goal is, how do we manage ourselves so that once those levels are hit, we can start getting into trades and waiting for those targets, right? That's where, number one, scaling into positions comes in, because we're starting small. We're saying, hey, I'm jumping into this thing. Maybe it's going to push through to the next target lower. I want to make sure that I don't have all the risk on the table in case it does. But we're at a major level. There's major targets. Let's get into this trade and let's ride it out as long as we can until it gets to those targets. Now, a lot of people have asked me, what's the driving factor? The technicals, the fundamentals, the news, and so on. And it all works together, right? More times than I can count, I've seen a setup that happens, like this dollar peso right here. It happens. It's a great setup, great targets, great levels we're trading against, all of that good stuff. And so the technicals kind of give us the entry, and the fundamentals drive the market. They help that entry, they help that technical setup follow through. So they're very important together. And most of the time, it just takes simply, some amount of news or another to get, to get that real good, clean, longer-term, bigger technical setup to drive in the direction we want it to go, right? And you could say, yes, the dollar peso could have gone down, right? It could have shot down from some other type of news, and that is true. But if that were the case with all of these great targets, that would have just made, that's why, number one, we scale into a trade. So if we would have been in this thing and the news came out and this drove down, we'd say, well, fine, we'll just scale into that because, because it's running further away from our targets and it's running to the next level that will probably cause it to turn. If it, just shoots up like it did, we say, okay, no surprise, because we have the setup, right? And the news just drives that technical setup to follow through. Okay, so the dollar peso is a great example. Does anybody have any questions about that? Is everybody good on that? That's a little bit of a tangent of what I want to talk about this morning, but any questions? Any everyone feeling okay about everything? Thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all? Okay, so what is happening? Norbert, would I sell at 2020 on dollar peso? Well, I'll tell you that real quick. Where is 2020? Because if it's anything below kind of this area here, I mean that's around some of our upper targets here. I would not sell the dollar peso just yet, but I would definitely be watching some of these highs here, right? We've got some big highs in place. I've watched that. We're going to have some big descending trend line here as well. So it's a long way from me thinking about selling it at the moment. But yeah, around those highs, I think it could be interesting. And what we're creating as this thing spikes up is some pretty high level market imbalances that we're going to want to keep an eye on. We're probably going to have a series of missed pivots down here. We've got one here. We're definitely going to have another missed pivot somewhere in here, so we'll have a couple of daily consecutive pivots. But yeah, it's a long way from me considering selling it. It might just drop like a rock, but it's not a sell entry that I would be looking at yet, or super soon. But the more targets it leaves up here, and as it starts to approach these bigger upper levels, yes, it could definitely make a good sell for sure. Okay, guys. So what I want to talk about a little bit on top of that is, knowing that this framework right here has worked out, and again, guys, this Aussie dollar that we're in hasn't produced any big profits yet, right? We're sitting in it. It's just bouncing around. It's going a whole bunch of nowhere. But guess what has produced, big targets and big profits? Every other trade that we've done, and every other trade that we have done has been this exact kind of a setup, right? Where we've got those big targets, we've got those major levels we're trading against, and whatever it is, whether it's the news or something else, it drives us to that target. So all we have to do is get into these trades, manage our risk, stay in these trades, make money, right? So, and that's what the Aussie dollar is going to do for us, and that's what every other trade that we're in is going to do for us. We're going to take an occasional loss. I thought the CAD yen was going to be a loss, honestly. I thought, I'm going to close this thing out with a loss, and, we don't do that very often. But I just thought, yen pairs, ooh, but I like the setup, and, held on to it, and it worked out. So what we have to do then is figure out how to better work the framework of these kinds of trades. Now, I've talked about this a little bit, but when I am kind of guiding us through trades and through these setups, keeping a group of traders kind of on the same page of getting in and getting out is similar to any other task that would include managing a large group of people and trying to kind of keep everyone on a precise situation, right? So it's a little challenging. It's not that, anybody here doesn't understand what we're supposed to be doing or whatever, but to kind of make quick changes, and most of it is really due to time zones, right? We have so many time zones in the group, from Australia and Asia and Europe and the US and Africa, that it's, somebody's always going to be sleeping when I'm making a big change, right? Which is why I make big, slow changes so that everybody has a chance to kind of follow everything. So that's kind of one of the reasons we put these trades on, we let these trades play out. Everybody usually has 1 or 2 days to get into the trades from the time that we take entries, and sometimes a lot longer. The Aussie dollar has given us 2 weeks to get in, so everyone's had a ample opportunity to jump into that. But usually there's at least a day or two to get into these trades, and there's a day or two to get out of these trades, because I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to kind of follow these along, right? People have busy work schedules, busy life schedules, time zones where it's the middle of the night for some, when it's the middle of the day for others. And so I want to make sure that everybody's able to follow these along, right? Yes, and you're welcome, Frank. You're welcome. And Frank, Frank here is in Australia as well, and we've got several Australian members. I want to make sure that everybody can follow these trades along. So that's why we do things the way that we do them. And that's partially why. And the other reason is because that's kind of my trading style, right? Get the bigger movements, not be caught up and stressed out in the volatility of the day-to-day action, right? As I mentioned, the CAD yen kind of had me thinking about it, and I don't like to think about my trades, right? And that's kind of an important thing. When I get into a trade, the Aussie dollar, how many times have I thought about the Aussie dollar? 0. I get into it. I know the setup that I want to take, and it does not preoccupy my thoughts 1%. I go to bed at night, I sleep well, I get up in the morning, I look at my trades, everything's doing what I think it should be doing, and it's fine. The CAD yen had me thinking about it, right? I found myself kind of, as I was away from my computer and playing with my kids or whatever, I'm thinking, I don't know what this CAD yen's doing, and I don't like that. I don't like to think about trades. I like to put trades on because I have so much confidence in my methodology that when I put a trade on, I'm not worried about it at all. I just put it on, and it's, the only question I have is how many times am I going to have to scale into it? And is it going to pay me money in a day or a week or a month? That's the only question I ever have, but that doesn't, occupy my brain. So, but not everybody is like that, right? And not everybody wants to set it and forget it. And some people want to be more active about how they do things. And so, this group is not that kind of setting where we're going to be scalping the markets and doing all that stuff. And we will take some shorter term trades. We will. But my goal is to get us into some nice trades that will flow through well, and that we can all get in together and we can all get out together and make some money and everyone be happy about it, right? So that's what we try to do, and I think we've done a pretty good job accomplishing that. But what I wanted to discuss a bit more this morning is some of the most successful people in my trade group, and I get countless people, and there's many out there that are making more profits than this, right? They're making more profits in this from these trades, right? And so what that turns out to be is a pretty good thing. Now, I'm not going to encourage everyone to go rogue here and just, if I say it's time to, we put a pending order in and it's 50 pips away, get in now because it's going to go. And I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is some of the more successful people in the group, and they send me, I have there's 7 or 8 that kind of regularly send me, some screenshots and some stuff about what they're doing, and it's great to see. And it's no surprise that some people like to be a little more active in the market than others, and so the handful of people that are kind of taking my trade ideas and taking some of this framework of these trades that we are talking about and kind of going a step further, making more money, right? And so the way that you can do that is by just take for example, I'm watching this CAD yen. We get into this CAD yen right here. Did I post a chart on this? I did post a chart on this. So we're in this CAD yen. And here it is, right? And I said, I want to scale into this thing somewhere up here, but then again, I'm kind of nervous about the trade and so on. And I post this chart. Clearly, the CAD yen is breaking a rising wedge, right? And so, as we've seen from some of the comments, some people got into this CAD yen at the rising wedge breakout, either for a first entry or a second entry. And so what that did is those of us that got in and stayed in at 80.80, we're in some profit. Those that got in at 80.80 and added a position on the break of this little rising wedge right here, saying, hey, guess what? I'm doing this on my own. I understand the risk, but it's a good setup and we haven't closed our bearish trade yet. So here's me taking this additional trade up here, 30, 40, 50 pips away from our first entry. And now, there's 2 positions there, and it's, the trade is 2 or 3 times as profitable as it is for the rest of us that are in, this one position down here, right? And so there is some flexibility, guys, to say, here is what, Jared is trying to accomplish on this trade, right? I feel very confident in my analysis. I feel very confident in, I don't put trades on to put trades on. I don't, as you guys see, and we talk about how patient, we are in the group about waiting for good entries. I only put trades on that I think have 95+% chance of working out for us, right? Now, there's going to be that 5% in there, and it comes, it happens, it's part of the game. We're going to lose money on trades sometimes. So we can't ever assume that, every trade that I recommend is going to be 100%. Although it's pretty darn close, but we're not going to assume that. We're going to say, I understand the risk of every single trade that I take, and I understand the risk of if I branch out a little bit, the extra risk that might come with that. But branching out a little bit is okay, right? Like I said, guys, it's a little hard for me to kind of, I have to take into account whenever I post a trade that some people are going to miss it, right? Because of their time zones and so on, which is why I try to kind of give a heads up we have this trade coming. Here's our Monday watch list, and hopefully we'll get into this trade by Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. And then when we get into the trade, I always will post, here's the next area that we're going to get in if it goes against us, right? I try to give as much of a forewarning about these trades as possible. But as whatever your schedule might be, whatever Norbert's schedule is, or whatever James's schedule is, or Jim or Dorothy or Frank, and whatever your time zone is, and whatever your availability is to be at the charts, if you find that your regular availability is not around a time that I'm super active, for example, during the London session, which I'm not very active during the London session, I'm always snoozing very well and sleeping right through that. I actually very much dislike trading the London session, but if that's when you find that you are active at that time and we've got a trade running and you know what the framework and the parameters of this trade are, right? We're in the CAD yen, we're in the Aussie dollar, we're in whatever, and you see that it is reaching significant levels, it's giving us additional confirmation, it's doing something like that, you can take an additional trade, right? I'm not saying everybody needs to do this all the time, but I'm saying you can do that. I'm giving everybody kind of this parameter, right, of a trade. Here's where we want it to go, and here's where we want to be getting in. And you guys have some flexibility. I will always give very specific entries, very specific exits, where we're going to put our first and second and even third position if we take it. But you guys have a little bit of flexibility in there to say, all right, well, I'm watching the charts, things are moving, and here's some extra confirmation. I'm going to put a second trade on even though the group hasn't put a second trade on. And again, I mention this because this is obviously, we make more money by adding a little bit more stank onto a trade, but this is what the most successful people in the trade group are doing, right? And this is how they're making additional profits. This is how you can get a few more trades in than what we're doing. You don't necessarily have to totally branch out and do your own trades, although you definitely can. But you can work with the trades that we have going already. And remember, on top of that, we've got a pretty extensive watch list of things that pretty much when these will set up, we take trades. But you can also kind of put a little extra time into studying the watch list and trading maybe some shorter term, stop loss using kind of trades around these areas, even before we get kind of that bigger, longer term confirmation. So again, what I'm saying is the most successful people in the trade group take my parameters, they take this methodology, they take the currency pairs that we're trading, and they push it a little bit further, right? Put a little, one step further on being more active around those positions or more active around that watch list, because their time, kind of permits, or because they're able to, be doing it, schedules and time zones and so on make that possible. So, what do you guys? Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Does that, or is that coming through clear-ish? What do you guys think about that? Good. Does anybody have any questions about that? Does anybody not anybody just blatantly disagree, or any thoughts, any comments, any questions about that? So yeah, so again, guys, I'm trying to just keep it a nice, steady, and we make, every year we make thousands and thousands of pips, right? So it's not that we're driving Miss Daisy here, but again, to kind of keep everybody in the group on the same page, we've got to do a little bit of a slower process of getting everybody in and everybody out of trade. So take this framework, guys. Take what we know a currency pair is going to do and run with it. Now, one thing to say is, along with that is, as you're experimenting a little bit with this, you're saying, okay, I'm in the trade that Jared recommended, right? I'm in this position. That's great. I'm thinking about adding a next position. I haven't seen him add a next position yet, but I'm thinking about doing it here because there's confirmation. Always make sure you have confirmation. You're working with confirmation, whether it's a breakout or reaching a significant level. You know, whatever the case is, make sure you're adding with confirmation. Again, CAD yen is a good example, right? That's a nice little rising wedge, and it broke out and it ran down like crazy. So there's that. But make sure that as you're kind of getting comfortable with this, that you are using small trade sizes, right? Use whatever you use for our trades, but as you're kind of experimenting on your own, use some small trade sizes, because if things kind of run away or you know, you're still getting used to what we're doing, you don't want to find yourself in a world of hurt, right? So small trade sizes as you're kind of experimenting with this. Small enough trade size that you might think to yourself, is it worth even taking that trade? I mean, I'm going to make an extra $13 on it, or $20 or $10 or whatever. Yes, it's worth it, because all you're doing is adding a little bit of confidence in the methodology and in the system, right? As I said, when I put a trade on, I don't think about it. I put a trade on. I'm so confident in what the market's going to do. Not that I'm saying this Aussie dollar is going to go straight up, right? It might go down to 68.25, but I don't care. I'm positioned for it. And if that happens, I'm actually excited about that. And that's going to be a great opportunity to add another entry. So I'm happy with that. But I'm so confident in this trade and in all the trades that I take that I can kind of maneuver and finagle a little bit. And you guys, as you kind of do a little tiny bit of branching out, right? And you say, here are the parameters that we're looking for, and I'm going to do a little bit of dabbling here. Use those small trade sizes, because it takes a little bit of confidence building in my strategy, and it takes a little bit of, just getting yourself used to everything. But as you do it several times, your confidence will get strong in this whole framework here. And then you can really start to kind of step on the accelerator, so to speak, on these kinds of trades. So start small when you're branching out on these trades. But as your confidence builds and as your knowledge and your skill builds with it, then you'll be able to really do some good stuff there. Okay, I don't know why Google needs my password. They have my password. Okay. Let's see. Joe, I have added a larger second position after the first one confirms the trade. Yep, that's good. That's good. Yep. So in our normal scaling in, that's what we're always doing, right? Starting small and scaling in a second position larger than the first. Dorothy, yes, but do not get carried away and add 9 positions. That is true. And that's a good point to bring up as well, right? Again, sometimes I think things go unspoken or are unspoken. We should just know them. But yes, when I'm saying this, I'm not saying, hey, the CAD yen is breaking out, every candle here at an extra position, right? I'm saying, hey, we're in at 80.80. It broke out up here. You had an opportunity to add a second position. Just add one extra position, right? One extra position. But yeah, and the other thing, that I've talked about a ton in the methodology, when we scale in, we're never going to scale into a position. I wouldn't say never. There's actually 1 or 2 very small exceptions to this rule, but generally speaking, we're never going to scale into a position 5 pips away from another entry. We're not going to get into this thing at 88 and say, hey, there's a candle up, and I want to trade this down, so I'm putting another one here. Oh, there's another candle up. I'm going to put another one here. No. We always want to make sure that there's a bit of distance between our entries, right? Because otherwise we get ourselves into a bunch of trouble. So again, I'm not saying add 4 or 5 positions beyond what I am, what I'm kind of talking about here. I'm just saying we're going to add, you guys can kind of run with this a little bit, and we'll add 1 or 2 positions to kind of what we're already doing, right? And those can be short-term positions that we, that you guys, as you add to them, that you guys can kind of play with a bit, add a position and maybe let it run for 10 pips outside of kind of what our trades are. But we just want to make sure that that we're kind of keeping keeping some moderation in all things. We're not adding a ton of extra positions. We're not adding huge extra sizes. Minimal extra positions, conservative sizes while you get confident with the method. Remember, the things that take people down in trading is trading too frequently, trading too large, and not having a good reason for the trade, right? So we can easily take that out, right? We have a good reason for the trade because we know that the methodology is giving us that. But if you start adding 10 positions to a trade, then you're not going to be able to withstand any drawdown, right? And too many trades makes it too difficult to kind of manage this stuff. Okay, thanks for bringing that up, Dorothy, because it's kind of a funny comment and it's also a very super true comment. So I'm glad you brought that up. Don't get carried away and add a million positions, but seriously, don't get carried away and add a million positions. So yes. Norbert, we took some Aussie CAD, New Zealand CAD because of low RSI. Actually, Norbert, I don't really look at the RSI too much. Divergence and convergence are great things. They're not a huge part of my trading strategy. So I don't use oscillating indicators too terribly much. I do have them on some charts and so on. I'll look at, I have stochastics on here, and that's fine. But I'm not a huge fan of oscillating indicators. They don't do much for me, but they're good to look at. Okay, how's everybody feeling about that? Is everybody clear on kind of those thoughts and what I'm trying to convey here is that okay? You guys good on that? Everything good so far? So that's what I want everybody to think about this week. And in the coming week, and I want to make sure that everyone's a little bit extra careful about, one more word of warning here. Be careful about adding positions to trades that already have positions that are in profit, right? So, for example, if we got into this CAD yen at 80.80, and you're thinking, hey, this thing's going to continue going down, and I'm adding another position at 80.40, that I would recommend pretty strongly against. And the people that are, successfully, adding additional profits to our existing trades are not doing that, right? They're adding and kind of working positions that are in drawdown, right? So adding to positions in profit, also kind of a little bit of a no-no that I would stay away from for the moment. So I just want to make sure everyone gets enough opportunity to get some extra activity here. Use the framework. I'm giving you guys the map here, but you got to kind of step on that trail and go for it. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys this morning. I hope that kind of helps clarify some stuff. We'll spend Monday talking about the watch list and what we want to trade. We're not putting any more trades on. I'm going to watch this CAD yen, and possible that we might close it out. We might close it out today, and I'll alert everybody of that, but probably we'll just let this run through the weekend. I think we'll be okay there. And then Monday we'll spend talking about all the things that we want to trade for the coming week. But we've got, the watch list is basically still very valid, and we probably almost don't even need to update this watch list next week. We're still, New Zealand yen broke out a little bit, Aussie yen broke out a little bit, still watching euro dollar, New Zealand CAD, New Zealand dollar. These are all kind of just going for it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Presidente. Okay, guys, so that's it for me. Questions, comments, thoughts before we wrap it up? Does anybody have anything they want to bring up before we shut her down? We've got our 2 trades. We're leaving that Aussie dollar to run. We're leaving our CAD yen to run, and we're kind of just going from there. So questions, thoughts, comments, anything I'm happy to discuss, let me know, guys. Let me know. Otherwise, let's get on with this weekend. I'm lucky enough to, my wife is leaving town today, and I'm going to spend 2 days with 3 kids. So if you guys don't see me in the webinar on Monday, it's because they won, and and I'm in the loony bin or whatever. So, all right, we'll leave it at that. Everybody have a wonderful, fantastic weekend. Nice to see you all. I hope this webinar added a little bit of extra insight onto making some extra trades and making some extra bucks. And we'll just keep going strong, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, guys. Nice to see you all. Yes, Dorothy, I will. It's gonna be a nice little break for sure. But it'll be fun. I'm excited to hang out with my kids this weekend, and we'll have some good time. So it'll be all very good. So thank you, guys. Nice to see you all. Have a good weekend. We'll catch you back here Monday morning, bright and early. Thanks, everybody. Take care.